Welcome to Binge Buddies, Reggie's 4-barrel ice cream. With me, your host, as always, Bryan Dressel. With me, as always, is Matt, Zombie Dog, Football, Dykes. Can you guess what I'm doing here? Because we also have Joel, Handball, DeWitte.
Oh, ball sport.
Balls.
Oh, just balls in general.
Just types of balls. That's going to be the nicknames throughout Phantasm.
So Bryan,
if I don't end up with the nickname Matt Zombie Dog Testicle Dykes at some point, I will be incredibly disappointed.
Oh, well, you might be disappointed then, because I'm definitely sticking with round sports balls via Wikipedia. That's where this list is coming from.
Bryan, how hard was it to not say who, what, where, when, and why we do in the shadows?
Extremely. We finished recording that entire series all of 5 minutes ago. So yeah, I would say extremely difficult, but I pulled it off.
I'm also pretty certain that you said with me as always is Bryan Dressel.
Did he?
I'm almost certain.
What do I normally say? Your host as always?
Yeah, I think.
And I just said me as always?
Yeah, I don't know.
I gave myself a demotion. Whatever. You know what? We're talking Phantasm now. Shit doesn't have to make sense.
That's true. That's very true. Take everything you know about story, throw it out the window.
Unless we're talking about the second movie. Yes. Which we're going to get into next week when we talk about my absolute least favorite movie of this entire franchise.
And my favorite.
You like the one that the studio stepped in and kicked out all of the creativity, recasted people, and went, no, you're going to make the movie we want you to make.
No. I like the one that's got the really cool shots of the car and the road movie aspect and the really awesome score and it brings in the 4-barrel shotgun. I
give you all of that, but it's still the one that everyone involved with it says that's our worst one.
It's the least Phantasm film.
Exactly. That's why it's the worst one. Anyhow, this week we're talking about the first one. That's the one that matters this week. We'll get to next week. So this is a film widely discussed as either one of the greatest horror movies ever made or one of the most boring and forgettable. And I think I'm watching it with a woman who has never made it through the entirety of the movie. And last night set out so determined to get through it. She's like, I need a beer, I need ice cream, we need to start it this time, and I'm gonna get through this fucking thing. We made it 40 minutes in, she was out like a light.
Is that a record though?
This is the most she's gotten into it. Like, she's asking me questions like, wait, what the hell is going on? I'm like, you really don't remember this at all, do you? She's like, no, I've never made it this far. And then within 10 minutes, gone. Maybe she'll like part 2. Maybe she'll be with Matt, because it is easily the best shot one. I can't argue with him there. But yeah, so I saw this movie for the first time a long, long time ago, and I hated it. Like, oh boy, did I hate this movie. I thought it was boring. I thought it was awful. I thought there was one good scene in it that involved a ball draining a guy's brain through his face. And the rest of the movie I thought was kind of a skippable nightmare. Fast forward to me having a kid and watching it while being stuck at home, sleep deprived and everything, while taking care of my, I think, 3-week-old child. And I loved the hell out of it. I don't know what the difference is, but I really, really loved it. And ever since then, so the past 3-4 years now, I've been obsessed with these movies. I think they're great. I think the nonsense is why I like them. And I couldn't be happier to finally be talking about them on an actual podcast. What about you guys? How did I know, Joel, this is your first time experience, so I don't think you have quite the story, but Matt, how did you come to Phantasm?
So, God, it must be about close to 20 years ago. I caught the second one on TV. And I'd sort of like, I'd seen things about this tall man character, and in sci-fi magazines that I got, and I've seen like images of it, and I'd seen things about the balls and stuff like that, and I just saw that it was on TV, the second one. I thought, oh, I'll give it a go. Missed the opening, so like the first bit that I remember actually seeing of the film was the funeral in the second one, which I won't say any more than that, but you'll know exactly where I came in after that. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really crazy, wild ride. And I then bought the DVD set, which at the time was the Anchor Bay DVD set that came in this big sort of like metal sphere where you it had like a stand. You took the lid off and the discs were in there. It was so cool. And as I later found out, it's incredibly difficult to move that from house to house because one of the little things snapped off, and then the other one snapped off, and then yeah, and then it all ended up. Yeah, I don't even know where it is now. To be honest, I think I threw it in the bin because it ended up just being so smashed.
Oh, that's sad.
Because it was very cool, but it was also very flimsy. So it wasn't, it was plastic and. But yeah, I watched the first one, second one, third one, fourth one, that was all that was there at the time.
I mean, it originally ended with 4, yeah.
Yeah, I watched all of them. I think in one evening. Went through them all in one evening. Absolutely loved them. The very next night, watched the first and the second one again. I've watched the documentary that was on that DVD set about 10 times as well. I've watched the films with the audio commentaries on. I went through a phase of watching films with audio commentaries on and TV series that had audio commentary on. And I watched those with the audio commentaries on. They were really fascinating. I'll probably go back and do it now. I've got the Blu-ray set as well. I'll probably do it with the audio commentary on them. Because I imagine, there's a lot that I don't remember from the audio commentaries. But I remember them being really enjoyable because it's, there's a real feeling in the films of like a family unit, the way that especially on the documentaries where they talk about how they shot it. It's it feels very we're all friends making films, and you get that in the audio commentaries as well.
I'm sure we'll talk about this moving forward throughout all these, and Joel, let me say your first take on this here real quick. But I'm sure as we get through these, it'll come up more. It is so rare to have a franchise as long as this one, started in 1979, ended in 2015, that is by and large made by the same people the whole way through.
Yeah, and any new people that joined in earlier films came back for sequels as well.
Yeah,
the effects people and stuff like that.
I think that's the only reason why this thing is at least stuck with me as much as it did, and why it has the fan base it does, is because a lot of these horror movie franchises, the vision is changing wildly from movie to movie. This is a pretty singular vision, even with 2 having the caveats I mentioned. But even with that, this is a pretty singular vision from 1 to 5. And that alone is impressive. And even if you don't like the movies, I know a lot of people who still appreciate that aspect of them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Joel, what about you? Were you even aware of Phantasm before this? How did you? Where were you at on it?
So no, I didn't have any experience with Phantasm or exposure. The only thing I think I've seen in a clip or as a part of, sometimes when we were growing up, you'd go to a concert and they'd have clips of movies on in the background while they're playing. I might have seen the ball with the spikes at one point in one of those situations. It is a vision, and so part of what I've had a hard time lately doing is trying to just disconnect and just enjoy something for what it is, instead of trying to dissect it and break it down. And in the process of trying to do that last night when I watched it, my initial thought as we went 20 minutes through was well, this person had a vision, and if this is their vision, I hope they seek help. It's
oh man, you're only in part 1. It gets weirder.
there's just there's so much going on in this movie, and it is everything's so disconnected in a strange way. But it's fascinating. It's really fascinating if you approach it from a just I'm gonna not have any expectations. I'm gonna try to not dissect this too much during. I'm going to just experience it and then gather my thoughts afterward. That's definitely the best way to approach this movie.
Yeah, I heard this movie described once, and I believe I phrased it a little bit like this to Joel before we started the show, was Phantasm is a nightmare that you can't quite remember. And that's the way to kind of look at it. Of oh yeah, I had this horrible dream. What was going on in there? This tall guy is chasing me through a hallway. There's this flying ball. I think Jawas were in it. It's one of those very strange nightmares you just can't quite remember, but there it is on screen. And thinking about it like that while watching it really helped me contextualize it the second time through, and probably why I liked it as much. But I think there's something fair to that too. Like, it is very much dream-like and nightmare-like, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But with the exception of 2, which still doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I'm going to rag on 2 a lot throughout this show. I apologize to Matt because I know how much he loves it. And maybe, you know what, next week you might win me over. That has happened in the past. But, I mean, not publicly, but it has happened in the past.
You'll never admit.
Yeah, no. I'll tell Chewie later. She's like, you should tell them that you agree with them. I'm like, no, that's not funny though.
I think that comparison's really apt though. Like it goes back to that disconnectedness. Things sort of just like happen in a snap. That seems to come out of nowhere. Like that dreamlike state in describing it is pretty appropriate.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, like some of the stuff did come from Don Coscarelli's dreams as well. Like, so the ball,
the flying ball specifically is what kicked this all off. Yeah,
yeah, he had a dream where he was being chased around the corridors by a flying ball, and you know, like this metal ball. It didn't like drill his brains out or anything like that, but it was like this silver ball kept chasing him through corridors. And I just think that as an image, that's
now that you mention that makes a lot of sense to me. That he started with the ball and then worked his way backwards into a story.
Because it's the best thing in the movie.
Well, it's definitely one of the most striking things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it just happens in a split-second moment. It is a really striking, gruesome thing that happens. And then it returns because they knew it was an effective visual flair, right?
And they had to fight to keep that in as gruesome as it is. Because it initially got it an X rating. Like, that was... The fact that it's so violent, he lands and then pisses himself, like, as he's dead. Like, it's gruesome as hell.
Yeah.
But
the thing that actually got them to keep it in was Avco Embassy, who actually ended up distributing the film. One of the people who worked there was friends with someone on the board of the MPAA, and he just basically gave them a bit of asked them a favour. And, it was going to be an X-rated, or they would have to have cut it out. Until that guy had a word with the person on the board, and they were allowed to sort of let it go. Unfortunately, that sort of bit them in the ass on Phantasm 2, where the MPA really went to town on that cut.
Yeah, the ball stuff in 2 is the worst of the franchise. Maybe that's why I don't like it as much.
Although there is a new print which I'll be watching now, which is basically, it's like the unrated cut. It's like a new 4K print which is unrated, and it's got all the ball stuff back in.
I will have to look for that one.
Technical question here. Sorry, this is only slightly related. When movie studios take these older movies and try to put them in a 4K format, how much does it help the visual fidelity on it?
It depends on how they do it. Like, how far back to the source are they going? Like, if you go to the Friday the 13th box set that Matt and I both purchased, which, could be a future season of this very show, they went back to the very, very beginning negative and made a 4K restoration of that. So that made that movie unbelievably gorgeous. And I believe they did something similar with this one, like the J.J. Abrams. Like, if you watch the version on Prime right now, it has Bad Robot in the beginning. Like, this is an Abrams production. And I think he did the same thing, and that's why one looks so good. So it just depends on what you're using to up-res that 4K. If you're going like 1080 to 4K, you're not going to get that much. But if you're going like the film source to 4K, it's going to be gorgeous.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there's been a lot more of them going back to like original camera negatives and scanning them in and recutting them that way. And that's always going to be the best way, because generally what happens with the film is like they will shoot on the camera negative, they'll sort of like duplicate that for editing purposes, then that gets put away into storage. So it's so pristine, but yeah, like that's. I always find, like, when they actually go back and do a restoration properly and go back to the original camera negative, it looks gorgeous. Like it looks incredible. Like
the first Friday the 13th in that box set is one of the best looking horror films I've ever seen.
Friday the 13th
so good.
Films look brilliant on that set. The 2001: A Space Odyssey is just mind blowing at how good that looks. Like
The Howling did one that's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's I think Arrow Video, maybe.
I think so. That sounds right. Because I had to buy one from the UK to get the actual restoration one because they don't have it in the US.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
The good thing about 4K Blu-rays as well is there's no region coding on them anymore.
Yeah. All right, let's do this.
That's
dive
a whole
into
other conversation.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to try to leave that in because I do find that stuff fascinating. And it really did help bring Phantasm forward again. Having J.J. Abrams' name attached to it, having that stuff out there that Captain Phasma from Force Awakens was named after Phantasm and looks like that because of Phantasm. Like, that sort of stuff helped bring this back out. So
do you know why?
There's some merit in there.
Do you know why he actually got involved with the restoration in the first place?
I assume because he does whatever the hell he wants.
He contacted Don Coscarelli and he wanted to do a screening of Phantasm. And he basically said, look, I want to screen this for some friends. Cause because he saw it young or something like that, and it inspired him and stuff like that. And Don Coscarelli said, basically, I don't have a good enough print, really. So J.J. Abrams...
True. I've seen this in theaters. It's ugly as hell and usually magenta.
Yeah. So J.J. Abrams basically says, right, I'll give you my studio, basically, the Bad Robot studio and all the technical people, and we'll do a restoration. And basically, over the course of like several years, I think it was, because they were basically, when they weren't working on the films that they were actually getting paid for working on, they were doing this Phantasm restoration for free.
So, in a way, you just said a much more polite, nice way of what I said of Abrams does whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
Yep.
I went into the detail a bit more, which makes it more of an interesting story.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Let's dive into the first Phantasm movie. Oh my God. So this movie opens with, I would argue, one of the worst film sex scenes I've ever seen. When you see their feet versus where she actually is, it makes no sense.
Why are people having sex in a cemetery as well? Has anyone ever actually done that in real life and enjoyed it?
You know there have been some people.
Yeah,
I mean regular people who met in a bar, not people who are into.
She's not even a person,
sex.
so that argument doesn't work. So.
Yes, I know, but we don't know that at the time.
That's true, and we don't know anything about Tommy, and nor do we ever learn anything about Tommy. He's just the red shirt in the beginning of the show.
Yeah, with this weird porn tash.
With this weird porn stash. It's odd movie. They're banging. She gets stabbing, and then she turns into the tall man, and that's it. Yeah. And that's kind of how the movie starts.
Yeah.
Bada bing, bada boom. Here we go. And
it's
I gotta
really
say,
watching it again. Just that opening, like the music. I want to say it's kind of like music with quotation marks because it's not necessarily actually music, but it just sets the atmosphere really well. It's just like that hum, and the title comes up and then it goes away. You immediately know, like, oh, this is going to be an interesting ride, and I think it sets the tone so perfectly.
If there's one thing that I would credit with this movie all around, it's its music. I think in general, it may be heavy-handed sometimes, but in general, it does a great job as sort of being that not just creepy, but also like kind of bizarrely stark and loud in places. Anytime where they're doing normal music without the goofballs playing guitar on the...
I was going to say, when you're talking about music, you're talking about Jody and Reggie sitting on the patio, right?
I don't mean to jump ahead here, but there's this time later in this movie where they have the sort of creepy theme music, but you can also hear Reggie playing the guitar. It terrible, absolutely terrible. I was very unhappy about that.
Yeah, they were actually playing the guitar for real as well. Reggie and Jody, the actors who played them, they're both actually musicians. So
I believe it. It had it had the stink of, we want to promote our musicianship in this if we're going to be a part of this.
Hey, that was very plot centric. He has a tuning fork.
Which is why the scene where Reggie was playing his music went on the cutting room floor, because there's no tuning fork in that scene.
Yeah, you don't need that one. You need the tuning fork for it to make sense.
Well, I'm glad they found their ass backward way to get there. So.
Anyhow, so moving ahead, Tommy dies. Sorry, Tommy. And they have to have a funeral. They're going to do it at the local funeral place, which is the most horrifying cemetery in the world, ran by they don't really ever name him, do they? It's
Just
just
the
the
tall
tall man. Yeah. But like he doesn't have like some fake name like, oh, I got to go see, the caretaker, Mr. Smith. Like there's none of that, right?
No.
No, okay.
There's a name given in the fourth for some. I don't want to spoil it too much, but
No, don't. I couldn't remember if there's any like just like backhanded like, oh yeah, he had some fake name he was giving people.
Yeah,
but,
no, there was no name. They just,
okay, perfect.
They referred to him as like tall man or that tall bastard or.
Matt,
Yeah.
you remember in What We Do in the Shadows where we would often constrain ourselves from spoiling things for you since you're in season 3 yet? Please give this treatment.
It's very important in this one because it gets weird.
Yeah, the weird, the unexpected weird is what makes this. I'm gonna take it. So
I don't want to spoil any of the weird because if you think this movie's weird, it gets weirder. The only thing that we really spoiled for you is that there is a 4-barrel shotgun coming because it's in the title of the show.
yeah.
But yeah, so he's Tommy's dead. Tall man is tall, although the internet really takes issue with how tall is the tall man because Angus Scrimm is 6'4", which I still think is pretty tall. I don't know why people are so mad about that.
Well, he's 6'4". He then had 3-inch lifts in his shoes, which took him up to about 6'7". And then in some shots, they also had him standing on boxes, and the camera sort of like looking
up at him. Yeah, but 6'4" is still a tall guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm
6'4"
6'3".
is-
So the
I'm
internet can shut up.
I'm 5'10".
Yeah, so 6'4" is still a tall man. That his name isn't tallest man; it's just tall man.
Yeah.
6'4" is tall. Shut up, internet.
The average height of a male is like 5'8", I think.
I mean, go figure. The internet takes a stupid maximalist position on something.
Right.
Shocking.
All right. So anyhow, we're getting really caught up on some of this stuff here. We got to try to move through the actual movie we're supposed to be reviewing. So this movie then kicks off with Michael, Jody's little brother, with his dirt bike in the cemetery. He's trying to peep on the funeral because Jody said he couldn't go for some reason. Thought it'd be too upsetting. That Reggie's like, good idea. Doesn't make any sense to me.
It's a funeral. Who wants to go to a funeral? Like, if a kid's going, oh yeah, I want to go to the funeral, I'd be questioning. And I'd be like, therapist?
I think it might be just one of those, like, I'm missing out on something because everybody else is going to do it kind of thing.
But he's still supposed to have been friendly with Tommy. Like, he's pretty close with Jody, so he knows all of Jody's friends.
Yeah.
So it's weird, like, you can't go to this guy's funeral.
Well, then he's old enough to where he shouldn't need sheltering from this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Unless it's just the whole, like, his parents recently died, so more death is bad. Like, there could be something there, but I'm still just like, the only reason he's not at the funeral is so that he can stay behind later and watch the tall man one-hand a coffin. Which is fine, because like that's economical. That's how it needs to happen. And then we know, oh, there's something up with the tall guy. He's not just tall; he's also freakily strong.
Yep.
Yeah. Why didn't they call him the freakily strong guy?
It doesn't roll off the tongue as well. But yeah, so he sees that, and then he has to go talk to a psychic. And excuse us while we step into Dune for 10 seconds. Yeah.
Which I picked up on a lot more this time. Like, having now actually read the book and seen the film.
Yeah.
Have you read Dune, Joel? I think you should read Dune.
Joel, we've been recommending that for a while. Have you read Dune?
I actually recognized what that was because I saw a meme about it when Dune first came out. So
that's funny.
I third-hand understood what the reference was.
But it's even like the don't fear and the fact the box is hurting as well. It's all very sort of like inspired by Dune.
Oh yeah, and when you look it up, apparently the director just kind of went, "Oh yeah, I was reading Dune at the time, so I just threw some Dune shit in there. Like there's a bar named after Dune, the box from Dune,
Dune's Cantina."
Yeah.
So were the psychics meant to be related to him?
Or the sidekicks?
Yeah, or the
psychics, not sidekicks.
Yeah,
psychics. I'm like sidekicks. You mean Jody? And no, they're not sidekicks. They're main characters. No, I don't think the
Batman and
psychics
Robin flew through.
Okay.
No, the psychic and her niece, I think. No, they're just supposed to be neighborhood people that they're friendly with because they mentioned that Jody's going to send Michael to live with his aunt, who's never actually in any of the franchise. So no, the psychic is not his aunt.
Okay.
Yeah, I always figured that like the daughter of the granddaughter of the psychic woman was like someone that Michael went to school with, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's how he sort of like knows them.
Yeah. So after finding out that his brother will not leave him, and if he does leave him, he'll take him with him. Which, if for fans of the franchise, he then goes out to. God, what happens right after that? Is that when we start?
Doesn't he start snooping around him while he's on a date or something? And they.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So that's when he starts. That's when Jody has the unbelievable skills of I'm going to walk into a bar and I'm going to pick up a woman in all of 10 seconds.
Yep.
And then not question that at all. And then when, hey, let's go somewhere. I want to go to a cemetery. This all seems normal. This is the cemetery my friend killed himself in, and his headstone's right over there. This all seems normal.
Why are people having sex in this cemetery?
Yeah, like, everyone just seems cool with it. Like, so I think we're looking at this thing as if it's going to make sense, and I think we just kind of like got to take a step back and like, oh, well, she's an alien demon sort of thing, so maybe she's just like coercing them with some sort of magic stuff.
Some kind of seductress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like her boobs. She's going, hey.
Well, like someone else's boobs. I mean, that is a
Well,
body
yeah,
double.
yeah, exactly.
So like that makes it a lot more sense as to why they just like gratuitously switch right to a close up
Yeah.
of them instead. Like, just say, it is right in your face, and like
So
like many other things in this movie, like there's no like pan over. It's just like snap, quick shot back to this sequence. And my
They
God,
used a body double, but the mother of the actress who played the lady in lavender turned to her when they were watching the film for the first time and said, "Oh, your boobs are better. You should have done it."
That's hilarious.
what a supportive mom.
Oh yeah. But I do enjoy that scene, like beyond like the eeriness of it, like I mean like creepiness, not eeriness, like creepy as like ugh.
Yeah.
But I like the whole I like Michael still just refusing to give up on following Jody everywhere, and then this by following him here actually moves the plot forward because one of the Jawa things chases after him,
Right.
Like,
Yep.
And then he has to rip Jody away. Jody runs after him, still with the underwear in his mouth for a second, which is just weird. He hangs on to those too. He's going to Cinderella this with underwear, which is just gross. But like, I like that. There's something in this movie that I don't see in any other horror franchise, which is Jody is a movable object. Like, he's not so stark, my brother's an idiot, I'll never believe anything he says. Like, it's like, no, you need to prove it to me. So like, all right, I was chased by this thing, and he's like, okay, whatever, you're going through something. We're just going to ignore it for now. So then it's on Michael to then, all right, so I think I almost got him. I got to go get proof. Yeah. And I like that that's in there, because that does not happen in horror movies. Somebody's given proof, and then they believe it. Like, that's just not a thing I can remember happening anywhere else beyond the proof is the guy with a knife is standing right there.
So I'm gonna use a weird way to describe this. There's a lot of in this movie that feels real, you know.
Yeah.
And by real, I mean like a lot of movies, especially anymore. Like movies are very, very scripted. It seems like, and they've got very clearly defined plot beats and communication. Here, it very much feels like these are almost people that are trying to act rather than actors doing a job. Like, and
hammer, meat, nail, but
but I mean, like, it even plays out and stuff like that. Does you know, when they're trying to hook up in the middle of the cemetery, he just runs by. in the middle, right? And then and they go walk over to each other and talk, and it's very like casual. There are these pauses that feel natural to actual communication, like he's actually thinking. And I think that's actually a pretty laudable thing about this movie is that in a world where a lot of stuff feels very sort of gussied up and with a sheen, that this feels very like, no, these are actual people that are living through this.
I think what makes it feel like that though is the central relationship in the film is between the two brothers. Like, because they shot this film over 3 years because they had so little money. They could only afford to rent the camera for one day, so they'd rent it on a Friday and then they'd have it for the whole weekend. And so they do it like that. So they shot it like, they started shooting it in 1976. So the Jawas that you see in the film, this was before Star Wars. And then when Star Wars actually came out and they'd already shot a load of stuff, and they went and saw it and they were looking at it going, oh, shit. Like, our dwarfs are in this film. But yeah, so like, you know, the characters, you know, Reggie and Jody and Michael, they all sort of like became this kind of family unit while shooting as well. Like, you know, the stories behind the scenes of like the actor who plays Mike learnt to drive in that Hemi-Cuda, and he was taught to drive by the actor who played Jody.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's something. So the relationship, the family element, it is quite a lot more real on that film, on the making of, than it would have been on, you know, say, an actual Hollywood production, because they all really did sort of like bond together, and I think it does show in the film, and I think that's
Absolutely
why
does,
it feels more real, like you said, Joel.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So, in full transparency of trying to move this thing along, I'm not sure how much of an actual full-blown recap we're going to be able to do, or we're going to be here for days. So I'm going to try to like skip ahead a little bit and kind of get through stuff. And there's some, I think, benchmark moments that we need to talk about in this movie to actually do like proper justice. And the first I'm going to go with is that moment where he does have to get the evidence, where he goes into the funeral home, because he can't skip that scene, because that's the scene with the ball.
So like that's a mausoleum, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and it was all set. It was a built set made by a bunch of knuckleheads who didn't know how to build sets. So they just wasted a whole bunch of money and effort on making way too sturdy of a set, which is fine because it looks gorgeous. Like there's a few shots in this movie that are just incredible. So I think it paid off in the long run, even if it was a little bit of a ridiculous idea. But that sequence with the ball is like we already kind of talked about a little earlier in the beginning of the episode. But there is just something about it. Like, without that scene, we don't have a Phantasm show we're talking about right now. We don't have a franchise. We don't have anything. Because that scene is so shocking. It's so violent. And just arguably insanely random. It's not explained at all. No one really talks about it. No one really mentions, like, I was at this place and this ball went into someone's head and then he peed himself. Like, quite literally, it's just kind of forgotten. And then later at the end of the movie, when it comes back, Jody just shoots it once with a shotgun and explodes. Like, oh, wow, that was easy. It's like a very easy thing to deal with. And you take all
one
that
of them is. It's
like,
kind of like zombies, though, isn't it? You shoot one zombie in the head.
That's
but
fair.
If there's a horde of them.
But you think about it in, like, this grand scheme of a 90-minute movie, the main reason why everything is here, why our show is here, why all the franchise is here, why Angus Scrimm goes by Angus Scrimm and not his birth name, all of this is because of this one little 2-minute sequence that, taken out of the movie largely doesn't change.
Yeah.
It really doesn't affect much. Like,
I mean, it goes.
My Blu-ray box set comes with a replica of the ball.
Yeah.
I think it goes to show you how impactful it can be to just have something visually striking. Right. Because the ball itself is definitely a part of it, with like how quickly those slits just open with those skewers, right? And then the actual area, that this thing made of entire marble. Like there's nothing that isn't marble in this area. And they know, maybe it's because they spend so much time and money, Brian, making it, but like they know it is a big striking thing, and that's why they also end up coming back to it several times, right?
Yeah. I mean, the balls are all over this franchise. Like, even up to, like, part 5, they get weird. But, yeah, it works. Like, it really works. Like, that is a hook that will just stick in you, and then you're I think it's got enough to keep you throughout the rest of the movie. Like, that was a shocking enough thing that, like, I'll watch the rest of this. Because then the rest of it's kind of an action horror movie.
Right.
Car chases, explosions, it's nuts.
I mean, the thing with that ball as well is the filmmakers knew that this was going to be a big thing in the film, even though it's, like you said, they could just take it out, because they spent like the budget for this, I think it's around $300,000. That's the sort of the figure that gets thrown around. Well, $900 of that went on the Sphere. Like, I don't know the percentage wise, but that's a huge percentage out of your budget for something which is actually inconsequential to the actual plot.
Oh man, that $900 down the drain once they shot it. That's a real bummer.
Well, then there's all the that was just on making the prop, and then they had to they had to shoot it. They had to, they spent ages trying to figure out how to actually light it because they kept trying to light the sphere, and then someone in the background of the crew just said, "Oh, you don't light the sphere, you light the stuff reflected in the sphere because, you're trying to light this chrome ball,
Right.
And then
which essentially is going to reflect everything." So, they did things like, they got a panel of the wall, the mausoleum, and they cut a hole in it for the camera lens to sort of sit in. And then, so they could get the shots of it moving. It's just really sort of ingenious things to make sure this silver chrome ball thing works. Because they could have made it matte black and they wouldn't have had any issues with reflections and stuff like that. But something about the chromeness of it, the fact it goes in the guy's head,
just right in his face. Ugh.
Well, it's if you think about it as well, from that character's perspective, he is seeing himself die as well.
Yeah.
The drill's coming out, he's seeing the reflection of his brains being drilled out of his own head as he dies.
Yeah, it's real fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes back to Joel's point in the very beginning of this episode of this was someone's vision, they should see a doctor.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving a little bit because, like I said, we'll be here all day if we keep going beat by beat. So after he has his, after Michael has his interaction there, sees the guy die, chops off Tall Man's fingers, which bleed this mustardy goo instead of blood, and he does what any kid does, steals one.
Well, it's still moving. I mean, if I cut off a finger and it was still moving, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna take that. That's good evidence.
You're a braver man than me.
I would not. I would kick it away and run like hell.
But he's gone there for evidence. That's the perfect piece of evidence.
I mean, okay, that's true.
It's a seven finger that's still moving.
Yes,
I mean,
it
is nice that it comes with dipping sauce.
That's true.
Yeah, that mustard dipping sauce looks quite nice.
And that moving finger does make Jody just immediately go, "All right, I believe you." That's all it took.
Yep,
he's in.
I appreciate that part of it too.
Yep. And it's like, oh yeah, oh no, that is a finger covered in yellow blood that's moving.
I mean,
I think you're onto something.
we've all seen it in horror films where the killer's here, and the killer is literally stabbing someone in the background, and the character's going, "I don't know, really. I'm not sure if I believe you."
Yeah.
So it is quite a nice, refreshing change to actually see a character see this weird fucking thing and just immediately go, "Yep, okay, I believe you."
Yep.
And his reaction's really great as well because he's like, "Yeah, okay, I believe you," and then he just goes, "Jesus!" It's almost like it's just all of a sudden just sunk in all in one go.
Yeah. And Chewie, for the bit that she did stay awake, she is not a fan of Jody. She does not like the actor. She doesn't like the character. She just, whenever he's on screen, she's like, ugh. But that moment, she's like, okay, that one was okay. I'm like, see, he's not terrible. I like Jody. He's good. All right, but moving forward, so now we have everybody on board. We eventually get Reggie on board too because the finger turns into a fly for some reason. Don't think about it too much.
That is one of the weirdest. I think for me, that when I first saw this, that's a weird moment.
Yep. That for me is the largest jump, and I say that with a lot of jumps coming up here, but that one for me was like, what?
And I genuinely think it's just because they thought, well, we need to have something here. So we need to, but we can't afford an effect. So let's just have them pretend that it's this thing's trying to fly away in the jacket.
Yeah,
and then they can just mime it.
Yeah, that'll look believable, right? It'll look believable enough. Let's shoot it.
I wanted that to work though, because they follow them the whole way down on the camera, and they're trying real hard to make it seem like not just like they have no control, but almost sort of claustrophobic, like I'm being swarmed by this thing kind of thing. So it is too bad that it didn't get executed on quite as good as the idea was.
And physicality, they go for it. That's somebody's house they're in, and they break that stairwell a few times.
Sure do.
Yeah. Michael goes flying through those metal bar things. I'm pretty certain that was not planned because, I mean, they didn't have stunt people.
Oh, I promise you, those were wooden.
Yeah, those are wooden. Those were metal.
I'm very familiar with that style house. Those are wooden.
Oh, it looked metal.
But yeah, either way, that was not a planned thing. And then later on in the movie, they break another one.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving as quickly as we can. So after that's all said and done, they essentially go like, all right, yeah, we got to go fight this thing, and that's what they set out to do. And like, I appreciate the gumption of these characters. They're just like, all right, yeah, evil guy seems to be kidnapping people. That's not good. Let's go fight him.
Yep.
And like even Reggie's response is like, "Oh yeah, we won't be able to figure it out. I tell you what, we do though. We go over there, we kick the shit out of him, and we make him tell us." Like hell yeah! Like that might be my favorite thing about the Phantasm series is all these characters is like, "Nah, fuck you, bro. We're going at you." Like there's something cool about that. And that kind of drives the rest of the movie, with the exception of like, all right, dump the kid off at the psychic's place. We're going to go fight this thing. The rest of the movie is kind of just these characters versus the tall man and his minions, which is fun. Like, it's just kind of a fun action movie. Like, there's a car chase where they're like, this kid is driving the car and he's, just handing a shotgun to his brother that's just blowing a car off the road that rams into a pole that explodes in this 20-foot high explosion. Like, the rest of the movie is just awesome.
I mean, they think about, like, going back to, like, this cost $300,000. There's a lot of budget on screen there. Like, a car chase is not cheap to shoot. A big-ass explosion, not cheap to shoot. Like, it's amazing that they got that. I mean, it was the 70s, so they probably didn't have any health and safety or anything like that. They probably just blew up a car and didn't actually inform anyone. But still, it's amazing. Like, they've got the camera mounted to the car in a few of those shots, and I'm looking at these shots. I'm thinking, this is some really good like cinematography for basically like a guy's third film he's ever done. Like, the first two were just sort of like made as well. Like, they're still learning how to make films at this point. They're still teaching.
I don't mean this is a shot, but they clearly are.
Yeah, I mean, like the Don Coscarelli, like he talks about how they shot the whole script, which was about a 3-hour script, and then half of that ended up on the cutting room floor because some of it was just not very good because it was all like experimenting with things and trying things out to see how it would work, and some of it didn't work, some of it did work. Yeah. And I just think that's really it's just really cool the way that that it actually came together, and the film ended up making $22 million,
which is just insane.
Yeah, off of an independent film funded mostly by his parents. Crazy.
I mean, it explains why Universal bought it after this. Like, they made it for nothing, and it got a legit audience.
Yeah, got a huge audience in Japan apparently.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the last act of this movie, and then we'll start wrapping things up. So when this movie goes balls to the wall, pun intended, it really does. You eventually find out that the tall man is, at least as far as this movie is concerned, an alien who is kidnapping either live people and killing them or just taking dead bodies, shrinking them down, and turning them into slaves for his own planet.
And that happens within like minutes. That's like a very backhanded conversation of like, all right, let's catch you up to speed. All right, let's keep going.
It's like the leap they make. Like he's got to shrink him down because his planet's really hot. Wait, what?
No, it's because of the gravity is so much tougher. They got to be smaller for some reason. Don't worry about it. Look, they're in barrels. And that's kind of how it goes. And then it's like, how do they get to the other planet? Well, they have this big tuning fork. Because you remember the tuning fork from when they were playing the music earlier? Look, tuning fork. It doesn't look anything like a tuning fork, but it works the same way, kind of. And when you turn it off, it turns on suction mode.
Same kind of is very generous.
Yeah. He turns on suction mode, and then Scotty beams the whole mortuary.
It's basically just the garbage truck leaning back its dumpster and letting everything fall in. Yeah. It's just a metaphysical dump truck. That's all it is.
Yeah. And it's very odd, but it works. I think for the movie's sake of like the insanity of it, the dreamlike nature of it, the fact that it works while not working, and then even like Reggie running outside and then finding the woman in lavender, like, hey, here's a person who's stabbing me for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, oh, I guess Reggie's out of this movie. And like, I remember my first time watching this going, that's odd. I heard that he was the main character and he dies right here. And then the movie just gives you the biggest middle finger ever. Everything wraps up, everything's fine, and then, hey, here's Reggie, and he's telling you that not only has Jody been dead, Jody died, Jody's been dead the whole movie, and the whole thing's a dream.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yep.
Like, as a one-off movie, you're just sitting there going, hold on. Wait, so the character that we're just following, he had the plan to put the tall guy down the mine shaft. He pulled that off. Everything's fine. They win. And then what do they get for winning? That guy's actually been dead since before the movie started, and it's just some fever dream of a kid who can't handle his grief.
So
Okay.
I'm going to levy, and it's going to be generous calling it a defense. I'm going to levy having some sort of defense for this. So that whole botch sequence, they do the whole like fear is the killer kind of thing. And since that point, it was in the back of my mind of just like, maybe none of this is real, right?
Yeah.
And it's a whole like just playing off of that fear is the killer thing. But the number one, it's half baked, so it clearly was not telegraphed well enough. And then two, just like everything else in this movie, it just haps. It's like hitting a car against the wall. That's how quickly it drops dead into that realization, right? So there's It's another example of good idea, bad execution.
I can't even say if it's a bad execution or not, because if the goal was to make you leave the theater going, wait, what the hell? I can't think of a better thing to make you do it than, like, it's not just the camp of it being all a dream. Like, that's one thing. For me, it's the character you've been following has actually been dead the whole time, and we're going to give you nothing more than just, nope, they were dead the whole time.
And
no, look, here he is at the gravestone.
Reggie in silk PJs by the fire.
Yeah. Like, it's such a splash of cold water to the face of everything you've been watching to just completely pull a 180, and it's like, wait, huh? And I still kind of love it for that, especially knowing where the next movie goes and how the next movie starts, which Joel does not. But knowing that, I'm like, I'm into it. When my first time around, I most definitely was not. I hated the ending of this, and now I'm a much bigger fan.
Yeah, I definitely didn't hate it. It was just like, wait, what the hell just happened? Like,
yeah,
that's what it was.
It's quite. Again, this film, it's really original in a lot of things. Like, it doesn't sort of go into like the typical horror movie tropes. Like we've said with the, it takes a lot of people ages to convince them, and then you've got that sort of it was a dream, but then is it a dream? Because then you have the tall man there at the end as well, so it's quite interesting. Like, it sets up a lot of the stuff that does come along a bit later as to what was real, what was not as well. So, like, you can argue the whole film's a dream, but then you could also argue that parts of the film are a dream and parts of it were real, and then it's all sort of like really weirdly sort of like mixed together.
I think that's, at least for my money, that's closer to the mark. You don't know what's a dream and what's not, and that's kind of the point. Yeah. And I've said this before when I talk to other people about Phantasm and why I like Phantasm and why I'll take one last shot at Part 2. Why I'm not a huge fan of Part 2 is I think ambiguity is kind of the point of the franchise. And 2 really shies away from that, and that's probably why I don't like it as much, even though when we get to next week, I might be singing a totally different tune. I might really, really enjoy it this time through, especially because my expectations are that much lower. But I think that sort of like, I don't know what the hell just happened is part of watching Phantasm. I think you should feel that way. And I really like it for that. Because that's what leads to these sorts of conversations of like, wait, what was a dream? What wasn't a dream? Like, I like that.
I think for me, the reason why I like 2 so much is that was my entry point to it as well. So
Sure.
that was like 2 was the first one I saw. So that, like, the idea of like going from 1 where everything is very much like, oh, is this a dream? Is this not a dream? Is this real? Is it not real? And then you go into 2 where it is very much kind of like a classic film. I mean, they even talk about. I mean, I'll talk about it a bit more next week. But they even talk about the fact that they had a test screening and notes from a test screening that they had to apply to the film, and like, how ludicrous, when you have making a film where you having to question what's a dream, what's not a dream, all the time. You know, to have notes basically saying, well, we need to know exactly what's going on at any given moment, kind of defeats the object of that type of film.
Yeah. I think we're ready to move on to favorite moments. We've been talking way longer than I intended to, but it's our first episode. These ones are always a little bit long, so that's okay.
I also feel like for this movie, like sometimes it's more interesting to talk about like the 1,000-foot view of something like this rather than the beat by beat, right? Because there's so much to talk about in terms of like intent versus execution and comparing it to its relative contemporaries and stuff like that.
That's actually a really good point. We might have to rediscuss. Maybe these episodes need to be a little bit longer than our other ones because there is a lot more to chew on. And I was trying to think we could probably do this like we did Resident Evil, but there's a lot less to chew on in Resident Evil than there in Phantasm. And I mean that both as a compliment and insult to both franchises.
I mean, that's the thing. Like with Phantasm, I feel like we could talk for hours about interpretations of things and trying to figure out what's real, what's a dream, because it is one of those films where you are questioning everything.
And you should. Yeah. But let's move into favorite moments, and then we'll have to say goodbye to this thing till next time. I can go first. My favorite moment of this thing is the incredibly obvious ball to the head. Like, how is that not your favorite moment of this movie? It's so iconic. It's so well done, and it's so fucking gross. I love it. I love it.
Striking. Like that. I think that's the and if you think about it as well, like all the memorable moments of all the memorable horror characters, it's always something to do with that character. So like Jason Voorhees, it's always something to do, like, you know, the hockey mask. That's iconic. Yeah. Freddy Krueger, like the burnt face and the you know, the claws and everything. Michael Myers, the mask, the sort of that very sort of like expressionless mask. The tall man. It's a completely separate thing. It's a silver ball which is not attached to him. He doesn't wield it. He doesn't throw it at them or anything like that. It's something that just sort of is out there. Yes, it's one of his tools, but he's not. You never see him activating them or sending them off or telling it what to do. It's just something that kind of has a mind of its own. Well, and I think that's incredibly different as well for these iconic horror characters.
Well, I think it wasn't true for its time, but definitely watching it now, it is unrealistic enough now, so the whole visual of these spikes going into his head and then the drill sort of like screwing into his head had a bit of unrealness because the face is clearly like a mask and dummy at that point, and the blood spurting out is just like a ridiculous fountain, where if it was more realistic now, it would be way too gruesome to watch.
Yeah, if you could actually see like brain matter and stuff like that being like chunks of brain matter being being thrown out. Yeah.
Matt, what's your favorite moment?
I mean, the ball is obviously the favorite moment. Yeah. Like, but I'll go with like a favorite quote, and it's the tall man. You play a good game, boy, but the game is finished. Now you die. I just think it's just such a good line. It's such a great line of his. And like, you know, the tall man is a character that doesn't talk a lot. Yeah. But when he does talk, you remember them. It's kind of like, you know, the first Terminator film. You know, he's only got like 14 lines in the whole film, but you could probably reel off at least half of them without effort.
I use that quote every time I play a From Software game. When I'm playing against a boss, when I'm finally about to beat the boss and I know it's coming, that quote just comes flying out of my mouth every time because I'm so proud of myself and I feel like the tall man and I just can feel like, you played a good game, boy, but now you die. And if I can time it right, like I am jumping for joy off the couch. Like that is one of my favorite lines in any horror movie. It's just not my favorite part of the movie because of the ball. But no, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think it's one of the best lines in any horror movie of any horror franchise and delivered so unbelievably well by Angus Scrimm. Like, man, I love it.
I mean, Angus Scrimm is just amazing as the tall man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he fucking changed his name to Angus Scrimm.
He has a presence to him that's definitely felt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'm so glad he's in all of them because I know he passed away while they were filming Part 5, but they still got him in there, and it's still him, and it's just he's so good.
I think the film was in post-production, and he actually got to see a rough cut of the finished film before he died.
Oh, that makes me feel even better because
Yeah.
he loved playing this part, and it's just
He
like,
did. He you see it in the documentaries.
yeah,
He loved the part. Like, I can talk about it a bit more when we get to part 3. But
yeah.
he absolutely loved the character.
Joel, what about you?
Yeah, so I mean, the obvious answer is the obvious answer. I won't call it favorite moment, but most memorable moment besides that for me is what I already talked about. Near the end, when Reggie is telling him to go get packed for his trip, he then pulls to his guitar while that serious, like, creepy music is happening. You hear him strumming on his guitar, and it's sort of like this very generic acoustic guitar progression. It's just like, that is probably the worst nightmare, is the sound design.
Which is really ironic, really, because I think the sound design of the film is what elevates it a bit more. Like,
Except for that one scene, I totally agree with Joel.
the dwarfs and like the sound effects of the dwarfs and things like that. But yeah, it does annoy me a little bit with that, because that track, that music, the score that's behind is so great. Like that track on the soundtrack, you can actually hear it without Reggie's music, and it's really good the way it sort of like it slowly starts to build up and slowly starts to build up, and then you see the reflection of the tall man, and then it's like, and then it comes to like this sort of like this end.
And you get that boy.
Yeah, it's like watching Stranger Things when the theme came on, and then somebody was just like playing bluegrass in the corner. Like, you would hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. All right. I think we've done it. We've covered the first Phantasm movie. It took us a little longer than expected, but I think we had a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to doing the rest of these things. Joel, are you excited to watch the rest of these?
I'm ready to have the experience. Yeah.
Just because I want to see, and this will be I'm honestly debating on doing this every week throughout this thing. Joel, what do you think is going to happen in part 2?
Okay, so I think they're gonna double down, and there'll be 2 balls. There will to be 2 tall men, and then 2 pairs of tits.
All right. So Joel's predictions for part 2: 2 balls, 2 mall men, and 4 boobs. I think this is going to be great.
Did you say mall men?
Did I say mall men? 2 tall men that are mall men.
I mean, he's kind of right. There's 2 double-barrel shotguns which are haphazardly stuck together.
That is true. So Joel might be onto something. You'll have to tune in next week to find out how close was Joel, or just go watch the movie yourself. Let's do a very quick round of plugs, and we're going to say goodbye. For this show and every other show on the ATH Network, be sure to check out athpod.com. Behind the Hype, I think, is done right now, and it will be done until August, when we'll be coming back as a new show. So farewell to Behind the Hype for a little bit. We will miss you in your absence, and we'll welcome you back as whatever the hell you'll be called when you come back. But be sure, in the meantime, to be sure to check out Damage Boost, where Brock has been crushing it weekly. I have an episode coming up with him shortly on the Guardians of the Galaxy video game and my take on that. And then be sure to keep checking out Demon Days. Actual play podcast. It is so much fun. I love being the bullywug on the beginning and the end of that show, and I hope people enjoy listening to it, because I really don't know. People might just be skipping over the beginning and the end just to get rid of my annoying voice, but I hope not, because I really enjoy recording them. And Joel, what you plugging?
Super GG Radio is a video game podcast where we talk largely about unreleased games that are about to come up and try to give you recommendations on what to spend your indie dollars on. Also talking a little bit about the backlog games we're playing and what you should play there. Also do a podcast with my wife called Afterthoughts, where we're not talking about Dune. And
You suck.
Not the podcast, just the concept. Not even not concept. Content. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know, I'm sure someday. No, I'm not lying. I'm gonna lie. We're not gonna do that. If I'm honest with myself, that might be a solo podcast with just me talking.
Hey, you get Matt and I on. We'll just take over your podcast and kick your wife out. That wouldn't be bad for your marriage at all, right?
Yeah. No, that's perfect.
You know what? Here, we'll go over there, and then we'll get rid of you here, and we'll have Kelly on for Phantasm. It'll be a perfect trade.
You know, that might be an entertaining listen in some way.
Yeah. But I have listened to both shows if I have not made that clear to you in the past. And you guys have some good shit.
Oh.
People should actually be listening to your shows. They're good shit. Good shit.
Oh, good. We have a listener. Thank you.
Here I am. Matt, anything to plug?
Not really. I've not really been doing a lot of like article writing for a long time. I'm trying to get back into writing, but I'm sort of more trying to do a bit more fiction. So I've been working on like just writing basically. Like some of it, to be fair, it might end up being like some short stories that I might end up publishing on.
That'd be fun.
On your site at some point. I've got like some that I'm in the middle of writing, and then it's like I just sort of run out of steam on them and just cast them to one side. But something I might actually finish at some point, maybe.
Cool.
I keep thinking about doing like a 1940s sort of detective thing, you know, like a Raymond Chandler kind of thing, but like, you know, like a short story or something.
That'd be very cool. You should do it, and then we'll put it on our website, and then people can check it out, and then you'll have something to plug.
Yeah, and then I'll record an audiobook version of it as well. But like, you know, it was a cold night in the fire. I don't know. That was
just reminded me of Throw Mama from the Train, which I will always be appreciative of. If you didn't get that reference, you should see Throw Mama from the Train, because my God, is that a funny movie. I think we've done it. I think we should say goodbye. Right?
Left?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
All right. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm done.